scientists came down to Sandia Lab. And yeah, thank you, I'm going to take it off. They came to Sandia Labs and told them what they wanted to do. They wanted to find a photographer to go up and set up a couple cameras. They had one on the north side of the campus and one on the south side. So I was in special projects, so I was selected to do this. So I went up to Mount St. Helens, took a couple cameras with me. Now I'm talking about high-speed cameras that went up to 400 frames a second with a roll film of about 400 feet. Well, we only took one picture about every second. So I had to modify the control box, and I had help from that by Gary Phipps and another guy that worked at Sandia. They helped me modify the control boxes so we plugged them in and got them going. They hooked off the batteries and they take one picture every minute. So that was great. So we set those out there. Then along came more activity at the mountain, and they decided that camera on the south side is not doing any good. It's so far away and we're not looking at the right side. All the activity is on the north side. So they wanted me to go up and move that one camera from the south, take it around to a spot on the north side. So my first camera was a site we called Coldwater 1. All it was a ridge about 8 miles out from the mountain. On the other one I selected was down in another place where there was one of the scientists. I've got a picture in one of those books of him. He died at that site. My camera disappeared there forever. We went over the valley into the next valley over. I looked for it a lot of times, but it wasn't any sense looking. It was probably 4 or 6 feet under the ash. So I lost that camera. So in the long run, I lost 2 cameras I initially started out with. These were not cheap cameras. Sandia never said anything, which surprised me, but they didn't. So anyway, I got a couple of notes here. I'm going to read this. My wife said I didn't need it, but it says, as everyone knows I worked at Sandia Labs. I worked in the instrumentation photography group on special projects. I was asked on February 1980 to provide the USGS 2 time-lapse cameras to monitor the activity on Mount St. Helens. Between February and May the 18th, I made several trips to provide maintenance and move both cameras to the north side of the mountain. The next day after the eruption, I was back at the mountain to assist the USGS in documenting the destruction. Now, I was home when this happened, so I flew up the next day and went back to work. The slide presentation represents the activity, the changes in the mountain, and my experience around the mountain for those 2 years. So now this one I'm going to keep because it's got every slide listed. I probably don't need it, but I wanted to make sure I was talking about the right slide. Okay, so slide 1 is, of course, Mount St. Helens. Does somebody want to turn the lights down? Yes, thank you. Is that better? Good. Good. Okay, the next slide is Mount St. Helens with Spirit Lake in the foreground. That big one there. Next one. That one is, that slide was taken in 1979. Next one. That is the Bride Lake on the south side of the Mount St. Helens. Next one. Okay, this is the beginning of the eruption. You can see the crater on top of the mountain. It's starting to open up. Okay, the next slide is an ash plume in April of 1980. The next slide is an ash plume with the large vent, April of 1980. 22, am I probably standing in the way of something? Okay, the next slide is 22 sequence of photographs, and I don't know there's that many there. It's not that many, I'm reading number 22. I think it's 5 pictures. So there's the beginning. Go ahead, Dave. Next one. Next one. Next one. Okay, that's the last one in the series. Now, I didn't take those, but a photographer did. And he said when he got that close to him, it was about 600 feet. He got in the sky and got the hell out of it. Okay, next one. Okay, this one that had a plane that was up, and people who on it, their name was Stoffel, S-T-O-F-F-E-L. And it was taken from an aircraft on May the 18th. Next one. Okay, that's another one. You can see the tail of the airplane up there in the upper right-hand corner. That's May 18th also. So, okay, at the same time, next slide, Dave. There's another picture from that same plane. Okay, the next one, same thing. Okay, I'm straight back into there. Okay, keep going, Dave. Next one. Next one. Okay, here it turns out the ash turn of the day. This is about noon in Yakima, Washington. That's what the city looked like. It almost blocked it out completely. Now we got a little bit down there, but nothing like we got up there. Okay, got an illustrations here of the eruption and what happened. So you had the buildup of it. You got mud flows and everything. You got the Toulouse River down there. So the mountain erupted all the way out, and of course all the ash and everything lifted out into the Toulouse Valley along the river when from up in there down to the world. Okay, then the next picture we have a log cabin on the Toulouse River. So it was solid logs that got spread out. Now you got to remember the area that this took place in was just covered with the most beautiful trees and growth. I have another slide later on that shows you how big some of the trees were. Okay, the next one is damage to the logging equipment up there because there was a lot of logging going on around Mount San Juan. The next one is Don Swanson, who's a famous, real well-known geologist, the best one I ever met. And also Jim Moore at Coldwater 1, May 22nd. There's still a body in that car when they went up there. Okay, while we're on that slide, go back to it again. Okay, while we're on that slide, when I first got up there after the eruption, one of the things they asked me to do, they'd already removed the body out of that person, but I had another camera Coldwater, one camera there, about 20 feet away from it. So I went up there before what they wanted me to do is, they said they got thinking about it. Maybe there was a person in the back seat. They wanted me to go up and fill in all the eggs and see if I could find it. You talked about a tough job. I didn't want to do it when I got there, trust me. But I did it. Didn't find anybody. I was glad of that. Okay, so then the next one, okay, that's a Dodge station wagon. It was on the west side of the mountain. The next one is a pickup truck. It was on the west side of the mountain also. This pickup truck, later on I actually did go in there and look. Now there were a couple kids that were in that pickup truck. They didn't survive. Okay, the next one, that's a Pontiac, and that's northeast of St. Helens. Get an idea now of this typical tree, the diameter of the tree versus the car. That whole area was covered by that size tree. Now they had little ones, yes, most of them were fully grown like that.
Terry?
Yes.
So there were a good number of people who were killed in this?
Yeah, I think it's 59.
Oh, really?
57 people died that day.
I guess I never heard that. I thought about the only one that was, what's his name, the hermit?
Oh, Harry June.
Yeah, I thought he was about the only one.
No, but he was one of them.
He was the one that got all the publicity.
Yes, he got a lot of publicity. I met him one time, just one time. He was a crusty old guy, but he always said he wanted to die that way. So we don't have to feel sorry for him after he died. Okay, so that's the Pontiac. Okay, another car. Well, that's the Pontiac right there. Okay, the next slide, Dave. Okay, there's a Roscoe Bridge there, and we had to use that to get in. Now, let me mention one thing, and I don't have a slide of this because I couldn't find it, but going back in time, when I went up there were road guards on the road. You couldn't drive in. Now, this is before it erupted I'm talking about. So we had to have a pass to go in there. Where they wrote me out my pass number 1. I can't find it, but I wanted to bring it in, but I know I've got it someplace at home. But number 1 was to be a treasure. Okay, next one, Dave. Okay, this is the mud flow damage. That house I've seen in a lot of magazines and stuff, but you can imagine what that house would have been like. Now, as far as I know, nobody died in that one, but I wouldn't quote me on that because I'm not sure. There were people who died up and down the Tulu Valley also. Okay? This is tree down below now. Now you can get an idea of how thick it was up in that area of the trees. And the little pond right there is called Fawn Lake. Just one of the lakes around Mount St. Helens. It had many little ponds and lakes around there. We call them lakes. Up there they call them ponds. Okay, the next one of my favorite geologists. He was one of the guys that was responsible for me being up there. His name is Rick Hoblin, and he's at Smith Creek near a tree. Now you get an idea how big a lot of the trees actually were. So they were never forested, never cleared them out, but they were all over the place with trucks and people before the eruption. I have some pictures of some of this vehicles. In fact, the next slide is one of the vehicles.
Excuse me, did they use any of those trees? Were they able to harvest any of them?
They did. They did something, not a whole lot. Most of them were destroyed and buried, and I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Right here they have a logging bus, which they call a grubby, and that was on the west side of Camp Camp Baker. And as far as I know, nobody was in it, but I can't say that for sure because I didn't know all the people that died. The next one is the inside of that pickup truck, that GMC pickup truck, and this is on the north side of Coldwater. Look at the ash and stuff inside. Of course, it didn't have a windshield or the name off, but that's what the damage looked like. Okay, here I have phreatic vents near Spirit Lake on May 29th, 1980. So we're looking at a little bit of the lake over this corner. But that's what they're right out in front of Mount St. Helens, off the landscape look like. So the next one we have, did you go one page? I think that's the next slide. No, there it is. That's the pneumatic and phreatic eruption near Spirit Lake. Spirit Lake in my mind would be back over there. I think this sharp peak over here is what's called Coldwater 1, and that's where I had a camera. Okay, the next one where we had some visitors. Up to this point, we didn't have any helicopters. We were really pressed hard for the helicopters. We needed some, so he asked if there was anything he could do for us. We took them out. Actually, I took them out, but I couldn't get them in because the weather was too bad. But he looked around him, and I had that happen to another scientist one time. We couldn't get in because of the weather, and the weather was up there. So Jimmy covered it, and when he visited us, it was on May the 23rd. Like I said, we asked for helicopters. After he left for a while, we had 6 helicopters to use. So that's before we could get in. So did he make a difference? Absolutely. Okay, next one. Okay, so there's Mount St. Helens again, Coldwater 1. This right here is one of my time-lapse cameras, sitting there in a tripod. It was one of the 400 frames per second cameras, taking one picture of me on any minute. But it was looking right at Mount St. Helens. Okay, that's the same camera. It was there, Coldwater 1. Yeah, I recovered the camera, but it was damaged beyond repair. So I brought it back to go to Sandia and I never heard a word about it. It was replaced with another camera. So the new camera was set up in Coldwater 1. Sometimes I have that yellow suit on, but most of the time you're going to see us walking around with masks on. And I hate masks on. Once I put on something, I hate them more than ever. But we had to wear them up here, and a lot of times we had the canisters, and sometimes we had, some of the people had tanks, depending on what they were doing and whether it was fun. Okay, next one. That's a typical load minus the people that we normally carry out in the helicopters each time. The helicopter, we can squeeze in 4 passengers along with the pilot, the 5th person. But when we carry that kind of load, we had so much weight off, we couldn't get off the ground, so we didn't go over the full load of people. We had to have the equipment. Okay, next one. Okay, so one of the sites that we put in the station, that was a place called Blue Lake. It was on the other side of the mountain, on the east side, and we had to go up a road because we couldn't fly any other way. There was just so much timber on that side of the mountain. So we had to go so far this way. There was about 15 inches of clearance on each side of the blades. You could hit one, but we didn't want to walk back that road, so we took this method of getting up there. It was a pretty heavy flight, and I loved it. Okay, we have a couple slides here. This is August the 7th, 1980, from Coldwater Ridge. And you see, this is after the main eruption. This is one of the eruptions on August the 7th. Okay, so next slide, today. That's more the private plastics coming down into the northern direction. Okay, now we have the private plastic flow and looking into the crater. So this is how they would look with all the ash and stuff being pushed out. And up there is the empty crater, no dome. It was all blown out, and then it grew back. Okay, now we have the next slide is a pumice flow area. You can see how pretty the pumice is. It was real hard to walk on this stuff, and I'm going to let Norm Banks will give us a demonstration in a few minutes, and I'll try to repeat that when we get to that. Okay, the next one, Dave. Okay, so now we got a dome and a vent from the ground on August the 13th, 1980. So you can see down in the crater here, there's a good hole where this stuff is growing up, and it grew really relatively fast from rock, because there's things pushing it up. Okay, what was the next one, Dave? I think that's 74, but it is dome from the air on August the 20th, 1983. So you can see the little dome starting to grow down in there. That was what was being emitted from the volcano still. So the next slide is Spirit Lake, looking west towards Harry's Ridge. Well, we call it Coldwater Run, but you see that ridge going up over here? I got a camera up at the top, and that's called Coldwater Run. And this was the lake down by Harry's Ridge. Now, if I had to estimate it, his house would have been right there, right up against that bank. He could look up out of his back windows and see cold water. Okay, next one, Dave, please. Was that it? Okay, this is one of my, what number is it, Dave?
79.
79, it just says the north end of Spirit Lake. Now that's where the lake has been. And you can see there's so much ash and everything in there, it just filled it up. There's still a lake there, but it's different location. Okay, the next slide, please. Looking at Mount St. Helens from the Pumice Pond area. We had a place where we called it the Pumice Pond because it just dumped all this ash and stuff into it. And normally we nicknamed it Pumice Pond. But we'd walk out on it for a long time, and it would give like this, and you can see that whole thing doing this as you were walking on it. That was pretty hairy, but we did it. Okay, the next one now is talking about walking in this ash. Very dangerous. We had one young lady that didn't do as she was told evidently, and she walked out. She had severe burns up to her knees, and almost a hospital case, but she paid for the damage done to her legs because she didn't walk. What he's trying to teach us is how you walk. You take a step, you go. You take the next step. You don't get very far very fast, but if you don't do that, you sink. So take maybe 2 or 3 puffs, and then the next day you go out there, you can step in the footprints and go right along. It packs itself into the creek. Okay, that's good old Norm Banks. Okay. And then I got to go back to where I was. Okay, 83. That's up at the north end of the Spirit Lake. There was a Boy Scout camp. westbound camp is under that. It's buried the whole camp. Okay, well, Norm Banks is the next one, and what he's doing down there, he's walking into the dome. There is no dome down there, but he walked up to the open area and he's collecting gas samples from the bin. The next one, well, it wasn't all working a long time now, but we got hungry sometimes. So I told the news media, because they were always looking for people to talk to them. I didn't talk to them, but I told them about this. They'd asked me to go to Karen, that's how scientific equipment we were taking out to this area to work. Actually, it's a day. He's wrapped up and we're going to have a picnic. So we barbecued the picnic out of the pig and holes that we dug out there at the mountain. We had to move him one time because we had thermocouples in the pig and everything so we could see how he's cooking. And he wasn't cooking right fast enough. So we moved him a little bit closer and he almost cooked too fast. So we had a really nice picnic. Okay, the next one is a picture straight overhead from the air. And if you notice, that's not a flaw in the negative, that's one of our helicopters. Next one. Okay, that's a toe of a pyroclastic flow, and they're actually beautiful when you see them. However, they're very dangerous, and they do harden up. Disappear before long, but they were very, very pretty just to see them. Okay, the dome, next one. Okay, that's the dome from the west side, and obviously I'm standing there because you can see the foreground, but I'm looking down in on the dome, and it's growing. Next one. Okay, that's the same dome area, but it's taken at sunrise, and you can see how much is glowing around the inside of the crater there. Okay, the next one. Okay, that's basically the same thing. It glows at dawn on September the 16th, 1980. Next one. Okay, two of the geologists. I've got to remember, these guys most of them come from Hawaii. That's where we have all the good technologies because there's all kinds of volcanoes over there. So these people are really experienced. This is Hoblin and Cassidevall. And they were up there looking to get samples out of that crack because of the temperature and everything else. Okay, next one, Dave. Well, when we were doing this, the first thing they had to do was the helicopters. When we first got there and had helicopters to use, we'd stay in them. And so we'd be flying around like that. But you can see a couple of people right here, at least one in the foreground. But the helicopter had to stay there. And they had to be where they could land real fast and pick us up and get us the heck out of there if we had to do it. So that's why I've got both of them in there. They're taking a sample with the helicopter standing by. Later on, the helicopter could go off and land down in the valley and leave us up in the crater. Later on, they just disappeared. We stayed up there all day long. Well, I had more hours in the crater than anybody else on the crater. It was because I was getting all the visiting scientists up there. They'd come out, want to go out to the crater. They'd go to me because I knew the inside of that mountain. So I let them go up there and they put up their experiments. So it turned out to be a disaster for me because they go home and leave the equipment. I'd monitor it and send it on data. But they didn't, and the Japanese people would send me a thank you and be something, nice parties. I never did gift. And it got to where even my wife said, you got a picture in that. They're never going to stop thanking. So I slowed it down, but we still did it. Okay, the next one is a helicopter on the south ridge landing. You notice the blade's still turning, but look where he had to land. I mean, that's a hairy landing for anybody because you don't know what the wind current is until you get out. So the next slide is Tom Cassidevall sampling Spirit Lake. He actually went down to that lake, scuffed in a cup and drank it. I asked him what it was like, he said terrible. But he did taste it. Now I'm surprised he didn't come down with something because he was real worried about Legionnaire's disease from the water. Okay, next is a pattern of the pyroclastic flows, and you talk about something here that's beautiful. You should see these. They have some beautiful shapes all around. Now this is, I'm guessing now, but down south a little bit, but that's where the whole valley was. It's kind of plastics. Okay? Okay, so now we got the birth of Muffy, October 1980. That's the first time Don Swanson and I were in the chopper, we flew around, and that's what we saw. So we knew Muffy is there, and the nickname, just like we called this, it was Muffy. So the next one, October 21st, that's Muffy again. And you can see how it's expanding and growing. And so the geologists for the survey will always make measurements. And so there's the next one. Now there's Don sampling Muffy for the very first time. And you can see where we walked down through. Of course, I followed him down there. That's very, very, very hot. Okay, the next one is a burning log. There was a time up at Mount St. Helens, and Dave probably knows better than I, but it rained so much in Vancouver we couldn't get out to the mountain. So we spent a lot of time in home or whatever we do in the office. I had a nice office up there, and we spent our time there, but we couldn't get out to the mountain. So that log was buried, and when it rained, it popped up out of the ground, still on fire. Okay, so the south end of this Muffy again. This is the south end of it. You can see where it blew out. Okay, the next one is Don Swanson. Remember, I've got that rock up here? We called it a bread-crusted bomb. Well, there's a bread-crusted bomb right there that landed in that one piece, cracked, and then split. Well, later on, when I was getting close to coming home, I wanted to find a helicopter and go up, pick those up and take them into Vancouver and put them in the main office that we had there, because we had a pretty nice building at that time. Well, we couldn't get a helicopter big enough to do it, so I had to do that project done. I tried. Okay, the next one, there was a vent on the east side of the dome. You can see it up there, vent, and Don Swanson climbing up. Okay, the next one is a picture of Don going between the crack and the rocks up there. That is part of the dome. I followed him in there. It wasn't even hot in there, and I don't understand that, but it wasn't hot. But still, you see he's got his hands on it, so it might have been wrong, but it wasn't hot. Okay, the next one is boiling water in the crater floor. Now this again is from the rains, and the valley is some snow. But you can see, you like to stand there kind of watching it bubble. And it was kind of heavy, and it was interesting to watch. Okay, the next one is one of Don climbing the dome for the very first time. And that was March of 1981. Of course, he had a companion rhythm. So my first trip was the dome. Don on top of the dome. So you can see the mountain, that's the St. Helens behind there, but that's the top of the dome. And you can see how crusty and everything it is. And we were really worried about falling through. I mean, it didn't, but it was in the back of your mind, I'm going to fall right through this, the inside lake, when that happened. Okay, so now this is Mount St. Helens again from Harry's Ridge. I don't know who that is, but you can see one of the instruments we use. And what that instrument is doing, you slide it on a place where we put into the canyon and put up markers that we could see from Harry's Ridge. And we optically measure the distance, and we could tell you how many inches that mountain was moving every day. So we did that all the time, and whoever was out there would take those measurements. I did quite a few of them.
120?
Okay, 120 is Mount St. Helens from the air, August 1980. You can see the dome down in there. But you can see the shape of the mountain down there, it opened up. And of course you can see where all the stuff was running out the front to the north. Okay? Here the dome is collapsing, and that's on the east side. Okay, now, okay, that's my helicopter that I've been in this day. What happened is Don and I think there was one other guy, and I don't remember for sure, but we were walking up and we got up by the dome. And I looked back and I said, hey, Don, look at our helicopter back there. So I said, oh my, we better get back there. Well, the pilot was still there. the twin, you only know if we had landed, he set the helicopter down, it was just sitting there. He was in it when it flipped over. Well, needless to say, next slide, we rounded up everybody that was in the crater. There was 2 helicopter loads because we lost 1 helicopter, so we went down and got a bigger helicopter that came in and picked us all up. Now it was a National Guard helicopter. It could take 8 or 9 people out of 1, 2, 3, looks like 6 of us up there that day. But we're sitting in there, you can see the dome. We were already hiked down quite a ways out of the crater. You could walk down here, it was just a nice slope, and walk all the way out in front of this mountain. Okay, here's the crew walking out after middle accident test. Okay, the next one is Gina Watsabo. He's measuring the thrust on the dome. And that's one of our highly technical instruments, tape measures. And you know, if we measured the distance there, it wasn't very accurate because there's a big hole in it. So we did the best we could. Okay, the next one is, we went over a feeder. We had some playtime, so that's a Gene again playing with the frisbee with me. We were throwing it around just to break the monotony of the training. Okay, the next one. Okay, that's the dome on the east side with a chopper. You see the chopper flying over there? Okay, the next picture is, I'm cooking eggs for breakfast. Took a frying pan and some eggs with me, and I fried them right out there in the open. All I had to do is put it over one of the cracks and it cooked like that. It was good. Okay.
That little crunch.
Okay, but I used to always have a bag of rocks that I picked up samples on. That was one of my things, pick up rocks that I was told to do because they wanted me for samples. So that's what it looks like, almost every bag here, and it's still be hot enough to burn the hole. Not all the time, but most of the time. Okay, then we had another rocket came off the dome, and we called it the Federal Building. It was really a big hunk of rock right next to the dome. You can see how tall it is because the guy's holding the rod, and I don't remember who that was. Not that it matters. Okay, here's what happened in a couple of days. That is the Federal Building again. They cracked outside all the other rocks and fell apart. So hey, I thought you guys would do that. Anyway, that's what it looks like. Okay, next one. So now, again, it rained a lot, so there's a mud flow around the dome from the eruption on May 21st, 1981. It ran down out there, and that's the way it was over from the air. Okay, the next one. Okay, that's my pickaxe, and I'm on the dome looking at it going away. And there you can see the canyon over there where Harry's Lodge would have been. So up here, we're up at the top of that. You can see that mountain going up. That would have been Harry's Ridge. And 2 ridges would have on the other side. Okay, what was that date?
This is 142.
142. Okay, that's the dome with the rangefinder from a station we called Guardian. It's in the crater, but we could always nickname places so people could identify and go to easily. Next one. Okay, that's the dome from the garden again with new material. That stuff is growing like crazy out there those days. And I say that maybe a week, but that's really growing. Okay, the next one is the Breed Flow and on the North Fork of the Tuda River. So you can imagine how much it rained there, and look at the difference in the coloration of some of those walls and puddles. But it was really neat to be out there and see that. It was not neat to have to walk through. You couldn't probably make your way through that. Okay, next one. Okay, now there's the dome again that is getting longer. Well, they were real interested in what was done right anyway. Well, I can't reach it, but you see that yellowish area? That area he was real interested in. He says, "There you, when I climb up over you, go with me." Well, I never said no, so we went out there. So the next slide is one blow up. Mike Dukas took this picture from a helicopter. You can see Don and I stand down that last picture we were there also. So you can see how small we are out there. And that yellow light above us is where we're headed. And that was one heck of a climb. it really wore me out and it goes down.
What caused the yellow color?
I don't know. You'd have to ask some geologists.
Probably salt.
Yes.
We had a lot of salt. Okay, now here's Don, and look at this glowing cave. It's that on our way down. Okay? Okay, there's me taking a temperature measurement, highest one ever made at Mount Helens, and a new mineral. You see the white stuff there coming out of that crack? Don wanted to take some samples of it. He had to take some samples, so we couldn't make samples. Took it back in. Nobody knew what it was, so they sent it off to a lab. They didn't know what it was. So we didn't think we'd ever try to produce it, because we didn't know what the material was to begin with. But the temperature, anyone want to guess? 897 degrees C. My hand got really warm, my friend. Okay, the next one. Okay, that's what the glows in the rocks and those cracks look like. They were fascinating. It was very beautiful, I thought. Okay, okay, there's one of our towers with the cameras on it, and you can see the rime ice on it. There's a helicopter down there, and if you notice the helicopter, it looks like the blades are still turning. They are. Because when they had to land in places like that, they wouldn't shut down. You did your job and then you're back to a running job. Okay, here I am carrying out a bag of samples. Now, did I work sometimes there? You'd have to do that to know how hard that is. It's really painful on the legs and everything else. But I stuck it out. Everyone else did that too. I wasn't doing one carrying rocks out. Okay, here's the whole crew in this period of time. And they're shoveling snow inside the crater. The only thing I want to point out is this one guy over here. This guy over here, all the way over, is Don Peterson. He was the head of all us guys up there at the place. He was a geologist that looked around out in Mexico, but he was up there as a head geologist, where he's out there with a shovel like everybody else, digging his way out. So Don was a heck of a nice guy. He did move back though. Okay, I lost which one did.
156.
56?
156.
Okay, this was me taking temperature again. Now I'm down on the crater floor, so anyone want to guess on the temperature there? God, I can burn yours hot. 385 degrees C. So it's still mighty warm. It was never, except it was completely covered with snow in the crater. It never was covered in the crater. It was always warm, and some places hot. Okay, here's the leveling crew again. You know that we have Christina on the machine. They have a lot of women up there that do work, and they went out in the field with us just like anybody else. We didn't treat them any differently. If we had a nasty job, we'd tell them about it. They'd be willing to do it. They had a really good crew of people. Okay, the next one. Okay, everyone wants to know about pumice. Well, there's the pumice on the south crater floor. That's Don Swanson again. That's our helicopter. You could go over and pick up most of these. And I'm going to say this one right here. It might be 2 pounds. It's almost like a feather. And it was very light. It's pumice. Very, very light. But only in certain areas where you saw the pumice. Okay, I think this is me on the top of the dome. My last climb. Okay, next one. Okay, I'm looking at the dome. Returning home soon. Next one. Mount St. Helens, July of 1982. Okay, that's me on Kansas on that big rock. Remember I said I was trying to bring it back to the office? But here I am trying to get some measurements and stuff. I just come back in time again. Here's my last one. But I just wanted to show that again. That thing cracked up completely before long. So if you took it to the office, it would still be a pile of rocks. So I'm glad I did. But I could never get a helicopter big enough. Now let me mention one thing about the Forest Service. The Foreign Service would do a lot of things for us, but the one thing they couldn't do was fly the helicopter into the grave. It was restricted to certain people that could take a helicopter in there. Well, I'm not saying we or the survey were the only people that went in there. Because other people did, but they had permits to let them do that. Now, one thing that I mentioned to say earlier on, they had a 20-year anniversary up there. Maybe I told you this, but we went to that, and did I mention it again? I don't think I did. Anyway, when we were calling them to make our reservations, Kay did it. She called them and she said, okay, we're coming up there. And the lady on the other end of the line said, who the hell are you? Everybody comes up, you're staring me, and they come and our friends. So that's all I got to say today. I enjoyed doing it.
Yes.
Hey, Terry, I'm gonna ask, was this the job that gave you gray hair?
It helped. No, you know, the first 8 months of up there, every day I went this day, I was telling them this was goodbye. I really believe that. I don't know how she felt, but I did. It took me at least 6 or 8 months to get to where I was used to going out there. But I would go and do anything they asked me to.
I hope they give you heaven, right?
It did have it, but Sandy did take care of care. Did I tell you about the running there for 5 more years? I extended for 1 year, and then I extended for the second year.
Some candidate for governor.
They wanted me for 5 more years.
I never heard of it.
I said, well, I'm going to have to probably go home. Well, my director called me home for a meeting. There were only 3 of us in the meeting. John Coleman, one of the director, geologist, Sandy was there, and me and the director. We talked for about a half hour, and I was done. I thought to myself, man, I'm going back for 5 more years. Now, they told me, you ready to go home? He turned to John, my director, and said, John, I'm going to let Terry go for 5 more years. If you can tell me he's indispensable. I don't care who you are and where you are. Nobody's indispensable. I was home in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
I was kind of glad to come home. I was glad to get home. Kay was not afraid of it now any more than I was at the end of my time. But that's taking things too lightly. If they're up there today, which they are, I'm sure they're going in there because they built a beautiful, what do you want to call it, a building out there where you can go look. Well, if they have another eruption like that building's gone. Well, we went to that on one of our trips up there. And one funny thing happened. We were looking at some pictures and stuff, and we were going around. And there was a little kid about that big. He walked over to her, kind of front of that. He says, Mom, this man is in this photograph. So she says, is that you? And I said, yes, it is. The little kid thought he called heaven. Sounds like heroes in that. I want to really tell him I'm no different than anybody else.
That's great.
And I wasn't. But I would do anything they asked me to. And so it did.
Anyway, in case anybody's interested, I was up in Richland, Washington on business before everything got cleaned up, and I managed to get samples of 2 different kinds of ash that came from Mount St. Helens. If you want to look at it, one is like talcum powder, and the other is like very, very fine sand.
Okay, let me add one. My home, I'm from Washington. My home is 80 miles north of Mount St. Helens. And right out our front window, we used to have a beautiful view of Mount Rainier, and we could just barely see the top of Mount St. Helens. Now all you can see is Mount Rainier. And it took that much off the top. And at the time, I was stationed here at Kirtland. I was in the Navy station here at Kirtland. We got more volcanic ash down here than my mother got 50 miles north of it. The wind was constantly from the north. She never got any ash.
Okay, I hope everybody noticed that there's food over there. Help yourself. You've done that crazy thing. Thank you for not doing it. But there you go. But I do want to thank your guys.